Next on C-SPAN, the daily White House press briefing with Press Secretary Sean Spicer.
Good evening. Thank you guys for coming. I know our first official press briefing is going to be on Monday, but I wanted to give you a few updates on the president's activities. But before I get to the news of the day, I think I'd like to discuss a little bit of the coverage of the past 24 hours. Yesterday, at a time when our nation and the world was watching the peaceful transition of power, and as the president said, the transition in the balance of power from Washington to the citizens of the United States, some members of the media were engaged in deliberately false reporting. For all the talk about the proper use of Twitter, two instances yesterday stand out. One was a particularly egregious example in which a reporter falsely tweeted out that the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. had been removed from the Oval Office. After it was pointed out that this was just plain wrong, the reporter casually reported and tweeted out and tried to claim that a Secret Service agent must have just been standing in front of it. This was irresponsible and reckless. Secondly, photographs of the inaugural proceedings were intentionally framed in a way, in one particular tweet, to minimize the enormous support that had gathered on the National Mall. This was the first time in our nation's history that floor coverings have been used to protect the grass in the mall. That had the effect of highlighting any areas where people were not standing, while in years past, the grass eliminated this visual. This was also the first time that fencing and magnetometers went as far back on the wall, preventing hundreds of thousands of people from being able to access the mall as quickly as they had in inaugurations past. Inaccurate numbers involving crowd size were also tweeted. No one had numbers because the National Park Service, which controls the National Mall, does not put any out. By the way, this applies to any attempts to try to count the number of protesters today in the same fashion. We do know a few things, so let's go through the facts. We know that from the platform where the president was sworn in to 4th Street holds about 250,000 people. From 4th Street to the media tent is about another 220,000. And from the media tent to the Washington Monument, another 250,000 people. All of this space was full when the president took the oath of office. We know that 420,000 people used the D.C. Metro public transit yesterday, which actually compares to 317,000 that used it for President Obama's last inaugural. This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe. Even the New York Times printed a photograph showing that a misrepresentation of the crowd in the original tweet in their paper, which showed the full extent of the support, depth, and crowd and intensity that existed. These attempts to lessen the enthusiasm of the inauguration are shameful and wrong. The president was also at the Central, as you know, the president was at the Central Intelligence Agency today and greeted by a raucous overflow crowd of some 400 plus CIA employees. There were over 1,000 requests to attend, prompting the president to note that he'll have to come back to greet the rest. The employees were ecstatic that he's the new commander-in-chief, and he delivered them a powerful and important message. He told them he has their back, and they were grateful for that. They gave him a 5-minute standing ovation at the end in a display of their patriotism and their enthusiasm for his presidency. I'd also note that it's a shame that the CIA didn't have a CIA director to be with him today when he visited, because the Democrats have chosen, Senate Democrats are stalling the nomination of Mike Pompeo and playing politics with national security. That's what you guys should be writing and covering. That this, instead of sowing division about tweets and false narratives, the president is committed to unifying our country, and that was the focus of his inaugural address. This kind of dishonesty in the media, the challenging that bringing about our nation together is making it more difficult. There's been a lot of talk in the media about the responsibility to hold Donald Trump accountable. And I'm here to tell you that it goes two ways. We're going to hold the press accountable as well. The American people deserve better, and as long as he serves as the messenger for this incredible movement, he will take his message directly to the American people, where his focus will always be.
Sean, thanks. You're saying it's not a ban. This was President Trump's tweet yesterday. If the ban were announced with a 1-week notice, the bad would rush into our country during that week. So he says it's a ban.
He's using the words that the media is using. But at the end of the day, it can't... Hold on. It can't be... It can't be... Jonathan, thanks. I'll let Kristen talk. it can't be a ban if you're letting 1 million people in. If 325,000 people from another country can't come in, that is by nature not a ban.
I understand your point.
It is
The
extreme
president
vetting.
himself called it a ban.
I understand.
Is he confused or are you confused?
No, I'm not confused. I think that the words that are being used to describe it are derived from what the media is calling this. He has been very clear that it is extreme vetting.
It seems to
I
fit
got
into
it.
this
Thanks so much,
broader
sir.
point, Sean, which Paul Ryan said today. I think it's regrettable that there was some confusion on the rollout of this. The House Speaker saying that. What do you say to Republicans who argue that this is a part of a broader issue with the president not enacting this policy smoothly?
Well, first of all, I think we've addressed that. That we could have either telegraphed this days in advance, in which people could have gotten on planes and come over here, which would have undermined the exact nature of what this sought to prevent. Or we could have done it in a way that inconvenienced some folks for a little while. Can I answer the question? No. I do. There's clearly some confusion, but I think part of it, your network was one of the people that just hours ago told people that General Kelly was unaware of what's going on, and then moments later, he gets on air saying, here's how many times I can brief. So, I mean, with all due respect, I think you have been part of the confusion. You have helped cause this. Despite claims to whatever, you claim that you have sources that tell us, General Kelly stands up and says, this is how many times I've been briefed, this is how many people are involved, and yet you were out there for...
I think there was a New York Times report that was cited.
Okay, so I apologize that NBC News' reporting is based on the New York Times false reporting. But at the end of how can it be accurate reporting, Glenn, if...
Things can be true.
Okay, so
It can
the,
be true that he
the
saw it
Secretary of
twice.
Homeland Security just stood up, and so you're calling him a liar?
He didn't say he saw the specifics.
Jonathan, I'm talking to Glenn. I'm talking
I'm
to.
saying we
You
had
said that
accurate
he
reporting.
was the report in the New York Times said that he was unaware of the ban.
Sean, let me ask you a question.
Hold on, no. Answer the question because you just called us.
A couple of minutes ago, you stood at the podium and you reiterated something you said yesterday about anyone who doesn't agree in terms of the career bureaucracy should hit the road. I'm paraphrasing. You had a statement that President Trump made where he accused the acting attorney general of betraying her own department by expressing a counter opinion. Don't you think that kind of language has a chilling effect on the public statements that your officials make?
No, I think there's a big difference. Think about the process that worked it here. The Department of Justice's Office of Legal Compliance vetted the executive order, sent it back to us saying it was completely compliant. Then the acting attorney general goes out and says, I'm not going to enforce it. You tell me how that jives. Because at the end of the day, if the acting attorney general has an office under her jurisdiction that says that something is legal and compliant, and then she gets out there and says, I'm not going to enforce it, that doesn't sound like an attorney general that is upholding the duty that she swore to uphold. So, at the end of the day, then she should step down. But at the end of the day, the attorney general either had a problem with her own division approving something, but it wasn't the president she had a problem with. The president followed the process, sought feedback, went through the interagency review, had other departments sign off, despite the reporting that said it was otherwise. He got, hold on, guys.
Betrayal.
David.
That's a very hard word.
Why don't we just let me answer Glenn so we can be polite now, huh? And what the answer is that we went through the process. The Office of Legal Compliance came back and said this is a compliant executive order, it's fully legal, and it can be executed. So then for the Attorney General to turn around and say, I'm not going to uphold this lawful executive order is clearly a dereliction of duty, and she should have been removed, and she was. So I mean, it is odd to me that we're having a discussion about somebody whose job it is to execute lawful orders, who chose not to do it, who chose not to do it, and then we're questioning whether or not we were right to remove her. That's the right thing to do. And if you looked at the folks from the right and the left, constitutional scholars this morning, they said we might not agree with some of the policies or the political or the party of the president, but he was right to do this. He had every right.
Why use the word betrayal?
Because the department's job is to execute. I mean, they're the Department of Justice, and if you have a legally executed order, and the attorney general says, "I'm not going to execute it," that clearly is a betrayal of what she's supposed to. I'm not going to define the word, Glenn. Yeah.
Sean, I think the New York Times report said that the secretary did not receive a full briefing until the executive order was being signed. So my question is, can we expect that secretaries, agency heads, when there are future executive orders or changes of policy, may not receive full briefings.
Look, the secretary was briefed on multiple occasions with the language of the order. I don't know how you can say this any other way.
About a full briefing, which is what the New York Times reported.
And I'm telling you that I don't believe the New York Times reporting is accurate. That what I'm telling you is that the secretary on multiple occasions was briefed, his senior officials were briefed, not just briefed, they were part of the drafting process. It went through, not only that, just back up, so they get consulted and briefed. It goes through the Office of Legal Compliance. Then it gets shipped out to the NSC and the Homeland Security Council. This went through a very, very extensive staffing process. So the idea that you can talk whether or not he got fully briefed, or he was briefed multiple times, saw the language, his staff made edits, it came back multiple times. I'm not sure how much more briefing you can do.
Question, looking at a bigger picture, this president, when he came in, said he was going to gather us all together, that he was going to bring us together, and the actions taken in the first 10 days seem to indicate otherwise from people in his own party. The use of the word betrayal. How is this president going to address the fact that people are looking to him to bring people together, and yet with his own words seems to be driving us apart?
I think that's a very one-sided way of looking at this. I think he's brought, I think he's brought unions together, business leaders together, Republicans, Democrats, independents. I think someone who doesn't carry out an act and using that as a way to describe that he's not bringing the country together is not exactly a representation.
One quick
Hold on. The president has done a tremendous amount through both what he has said and done, more importantly, to start to bring this country together. And his policies, frankly, are focused on keeping every American safe and getting every American a higher paying and better paying job. I think that is something that benefits all of us. Yesterday, we called several outlets who were severely misreporting this topic to better inform them about what this memo means. So let me just walk through this real quick. This is the 2001 NSC stand-up memo. This is the 2009 memo. And then this one is I've got the 13 here as well, or the 2017 rather, right here. This is the language that consists of the national security team, the director of the Central Intelligence, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, as statutory advisors to the NSC, shall also attend NSC meetings. That is the identical language in 2017 as it was in 2009 when Obama drafted his. Verbatim, identical. The makeup of the Principals Committee from 2017 is exactly as it was in both 2017 as it was in 2001. 100% identical, except we add the word also. I think it's pretty clear that if you look at all three of these, that's what it does. To be clear, the memo just yesterday, we called that out. Starting with the membership of the NSC, as you can see here, the language that's part of the president's memo is identical to the language from President Bush's 2001. The only thing that's changed in this is the addition of the Director of National Intelligence as a position that didn't exist in 2001. For what it's worth, it's the same as Obama's, save for the word also. In terms of the Principals Committee, as you can see from the various language here, and this is, I'll give you 2017 on the Principals Committee. This is the Principals Committee in 2017, and this is the 2001 Principals Committee. It is literally 100% the same. 2001 and 2017 are identical. So this idea that there's been a change or a downgrade is utter nonsense. April.
Sean, two questions. One, how important is national security information to you? How you're saying that they're at the table and they can come to the table if they want at some meetings. But
No, that's not what I said, just to be clear.
Okay.
I don't think I can underscore this enough. What we're saying is nothing has changed. We've, in fact, added and grown this. The Director of National Intelligence and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs are, by statute, part of the NSC. Full stop. What we've done is made sure that on issues of homeland security and domestic policy, they are always welcome to attend, 100%. However, if the issue is on, pandemic flu or other domestic type natures that don't involve the military, it would be a waste of time to drag the chairman of the Joint Chiefs Staff over. If he wants to attend, he's part of the committee, he can come anytime. So to try to talk about downgrading or not take this seriously is a misreading of this. It's really a disservice. And I think that for those people who took the time to read it, they understand that. But I've seen so much misreporting all this weekend about downgrading this individual or upgrading. The language could not be clear. It is 100% identical. And so any misreading of it otherwise is a spread of misinformation. Plain and simple.
Okay, so you're saying they're at the table.
No.
But-
I'm saying they've always been at the table. And they continue to be, and that he has a tremendous amount of respect for him. And so any reporting otherwise is a misunderstanding of it 100%.
Let me ask my question.
Okay.
Okay, they're at the table, but how important are their suggestions or their statements to this administration?
Unbelievable. When you look at Secretary Mattis was in the Oval Office. He was on the phone with CIA Director Pompeo this afternoon or this morning. He values their opinion. I don't think you can express in words how much respect he has, whether it's Chairman Dunford, General Mattis, General Kelly, Director Pompeo. All of these individuals, I think he's shown through deed and action and word how much he cares about them. The first stop he made was to the CIA because of how much he values the work that they do and the respect that he has for them. So I really don't know how much more he can do to show how much he values them.
Last night, the Republican Jewish Coalition called it an unfortunate omission that the White House did not acknowledge the Jewish people or
They weren't in
anti-Semitism
President Bush's
explicitly.
acknowledgement either.
It was President Bush did mention anti-Semitism. So,
Look, I think
can
this
you
is-
explain why you decided to depart from bipartisan tradition of two presidents?
It's not. The statement was written with the help of an individual who's both Jewish and the descendants of Holocaust survivors. To suggest that remembering the Holocaust and acknowledging all of the people, Jewish, gypsies, priests, disabled, gays, and lesbians, is frank. It is pathetic that people are picking on a statement. I remember we issued a statement at Christmas time calling Christ the King, and many of the reporters that are in this room and otherwise started wondering whether we're referring to the King as the president-elect. Do you know how offensive that was to Christians? The idea that you're nitpicking a statement that sought to remember this tragic event that occurred and the people who died in it is just ridiculous. I think he acknowledged the suffering that existed and wants to make sure that it's enshrined in the American people's memory so that something like this never, ever happens again. And I think to sit there and suggest that he was trying to single out anything, and a people of which he has shown such tremendous respect for, and such a willingness in terms of the state of Israel to go out there and show the partnership that needs to exist between us and the respect. And when you contrast that, frankly, a statement, and you look at the actions of the last administration, the Iran nuclear deal, them giving Palestine an equal footing in terms of the amendment that was passed to the UN Security Council on their way out the door, to compare a statement that remembers the Holocaust with the actions of the last 8 years and the disrespect that was shown to Israel is unbelievable. Where were the questions about the UN Security Council resolution that came forward and the idea of this unprecedented step that the outgoing administration took as a massive slap in the face of Israel? Where were the questions then?
The statement.
No, I didn't.
Sean?
Did I say that? No.
You mentioned that.
I know what I said.
Holocaust.
I didn't say Jared's name.
So it was
No,
not.
I'm not. But I'm just saying. No, I'm not getting into who wrote it. But he has several members of the Jewish faith on his senior staff, and to suggest that it was an omission of anything else is kind of ridiculous.
Sean, your answer about the context
Yeah.
doesn't make sense when you think about what Senator Ben Sass said today and this morning on TV. He said that he asked Judge Gorsuch specifically about the president's so-called judge tweet, and in response,
Phil, this is like the fourth
judge-
time I've asked an answer.
No, but this is a different context, Sean.
I understand that, Phil. I've
It's
asked
directly about the
I
president.
understand that, and I've said exactly what Senator Ayotte said about it. I don't know how many times you can ask. Yeah,
It was only about
I
the
understand.
fall.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sean, I'm going to continue on this line despite what's happening there. Why isn't the White House, why isn't the president concerned about the influence or the appearance of the influence on the independent judiciary?
Why isn't he? I mean, he is free to speak his mind. Where has this outrage been for the last 100 years? There's been
the Obama administration or any previous administration. I'm talking about this president.
I understand, and the
this
president
White
has
House.
the part of the reason the president got elected is because he speaks his mind. He doesn't hold it back. He's authentic, and he's not going to sit back. I think when he feels very passionately about something as much as the executive order, he was doing it to make sure Americans were safe. The order, the U.S. code is crystal clear on this. I think I've read it for like 3 days in a row. And it can't be any clearer how much authority it gives the president to do what he can to keep it safe. He's concerned that he's doing what he can to keep this country safe, and there's been a lot of activity to stand in the way. So I'm not sure how many more times I can read the code to you, but 8 U.S. Code 1182.
Talking about it is not how the judicial process works.
Thank you. You've asked the question now 8 times.
One more, I'd like to ask you, about a different set of comments that have been made.
I understand. Thank you. Go ahead.
About a different set of comments that have been made, Sean, also from Kellyanne Conway earlier this week.
Let him go.
Earlier from this week, you said this is in context of the Nordstrom and not about what she was counseled about, but about something she said to CNN earlier this week, is that the president doesn't comment on everything. And so I want to contrast the president's repeated statements about Nordstrom with the lack of comments about some other things, including, for example, the attack on Quebec Mosque and other similar environments. Why is the president, when he chooses to...
Do you know, hold on, before, because you just brought that up, I literally stand at this podium and opened a briefing a couple days ago about the president expressing his condolences. I literally opened the briefing about it. So for you to sit there and say... I know. So why are you asking why he didn't do it when I literally stood here and did it?
Statement.
I don't understand what you're asking.
Kellyanne's comment were about that the president doesn't have time to tweet about everything.
Right.
He's tweeting about this.
Right.
He's not tweeting about something else.
I came out here and actually spoke about it and said the president spoke.
The president's time.
What are you? You're equating me addressing the nation here and a tweet? I mean, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. Okay, this is silly. Okay, next. Okay,
and you're equating
thank you. You've asked your question. Thank you, Kristen.
Sean, thank you. A couple of questions.
Yeah.
I want to go back to that draft executive order that would undo some of the restrictions for handling detainees. Has the president seen that draft EO?
I'm sorry, the one that he's
Has
signing?
he seen it? No, the draft executive order that would undo the restrictions on how to handle detainees.
I guess I'm having a hard time. You're asking me if a document that's not a White House document he's seen. I don't believe, to the best of my knowledge, and so I would ask. There's this is the second day in a row we're getting asked about documents that are floating around, and people saying, and frankly, reports being published attributing documents to the White House that are not White House documents.
And I haven't attributed.
No, I'm not saying you.
Do you know if he's seen it?
To the best of my knowledge, he hasn't seen it. I think he's got a lot of other things.
Since it is floating around, I have a couple more questions.
You get one more. Let's not agree.
I have 2 more. Since it is floating around,
okay.
Is he considering
Kristen,
bringing back
this is a
black sites and
I'm not going to start
waterboarding?
answering hypotheticals about documents that are floating around. That's a ridiculous. You're basically okay, Kristen. We're going to end this right now. Hunter, no, Hunter Walker. Thank you.
Summer. Summer.